all things continually lead back to serpents, dragons, fairies, Nephilim, and fallen angels.
In the distance looms a mystical mountain.
As Mike Heiser used to say, if it's in the Bible and it's weird, it's probably important.
At its peak, a great fire burns, concealing the Prometheus lens.
This development of this knowledge that's being talked about within the mystery schools.
An ancient artifact said to reveal the hidden truth within a deliberately darkened world.
There's a hidden history that's been deliberately obfuscated from the peoples of the world.
Join us as we travel and explore the vast unknown. It's a hero's journey with dragons to slay, damsels to save, and innumerable treasures to hoard. Torches high.
The Smithsonian, they caught wind of a giant skeleton, would send their agents out to get it.
But it takes courage to move forward, to move out of the shadows, out of the unreality that we think of as reality.
We are all on the hero's journey.
Mankind has been in contact with and influenced by extraterrestrials.
Leave the sentient mound of bull feathers out of it.
You know, look at it from a different perspective.
What is happening and what is up? Hold out your glass, because you're about to get it filled up. Welcome to the Prometheus Lens podcast, the place where the conversations are always enlightening. I'm your host, Justin, and here we like to use the allegory of the Prometheus Lens to take a second look at everything. Today, got a great episode lined up for you guys. We got mysteries, ancient mysteries. We got ancient sailors. We got giants. We got treasures and burial mounds and caves and lore. I mean, this is just a jam-packed episode. Found this gentleman a few years ago on social media, and some of you may be familiar with him, but he's the treasure hunter, Terry Carter, and reached out to him, and he was ready to come out and talk to me, so I'm very, very thankful, and I know you guys are going to really enjoy this conversation today. So, Terry, welcome to the Prometheus Lens, and thank you so much for your time.
Hey, thank you for inviting me.
Well, just for those that are not familiar with you, just give us a synopsis of who you are, your specialties, field of study, and how you got into what you're doing now.
So, I started out treasure hunting. I was a treasure hunting, looking for, near me, there's a massive treasure scattered all over the mountains where I'm at, called the Lost Roads Mine, and it has to deal with hundreds of Spanish mines and the Spaniards enslaving the Indians, working them till death. The Indians didn't like that program, so they revolted against the Spaniards, killed them all off, covered up, buried up the mines, covered up the gold bars, whatever it took for the tribe, for however many years, man, however long it took them. They spent there because that those Spaniards coming in was bad for them, so they obliterated all traces. Well, slowly some of them traces of those gold bars and that started to surface, and the stories started surfacing, and I lived near that area, so I spent a lot of time in the mountains Spanish treasure hunting. But I ran into some unique hieroglyphs. I mean, these things, they're not Egyptian, but that's the best way to describe them. They looked like Egyptian to me. They was neatly and painstakingly carved in the mountains, out of off the beat path, high in the mountains and the cliffs, pretty much inaccessible. And trying to research and do stuff like that or figure out what these were flipped me from treasure hunting to finding out about the ancients and the ancient things that went on around here, about the giants, about out of place archaeology, diffusionism, all that kind of stuff. And it totally fascinated me because I thought, why is this? What's the big deal if people knows that there was intercontinental travel before Columbus? What's the big deal if people knows that there was giants? What's the big deal, And it just, fascinated me. I'm thinking, are these people, are the academia, are they really trying to hide this from us, or is that just a conspiracy theory? And so I dug deep in just to try and find answers. But while I was digging deep in, I got into some files that I shouldn't have been able to get into. It was a complete accident. It was a fluke. The gods was shining on me. The stars aligned just right. And I got into these files that should not have been for me. And when I seen what was in these files, it talked about this exact stuff. And one of the things in there was Brewer's Cave. And that's how I knew so much about Brewer's Cave. And you was asking me about that, Justin. So that's how I got into this. It started treasure hunting, and then it morphed into more.
Well, on your treasure hunts, did you ever find anything cool or fascinating?
Found all kinds of cool things, but I'm a treasure hunter, not a treasure finder. At least that's what everybody needs to say.
Right. And
one of the coolest things I did find while I was treasure hunting is these, what I call the mystery glyphs. They're a unique set of hieroglyphs carved in cliff walls and rock walls scattered across the western United States. There's, to date, I've found, I think, 38 of them scattered all across the western United States. And, to find that and to track that down is a huge mystery. Who would travel across the western United States? They're at least, bare minimum, they're at least 150 years old. Now, how much older than that? Have no idea. But who would travel all across the western United States leaving this message? It's a message in remote locations that you're just not going to, it's an accident that you could stumble on and find these, because the majority of them are in out of place, So that was one of the unique things that's what led me on this chase to finding this other stuff. And so that's my best find, is finding one of these locations. When I found these, they only knew of 12 of these sites scattered throughout the western United States. And I started tracking and researching and figuring out and interviewing, and I've pushed that up to 38 known sites. They were known about, but they were known about by treasure hunters, and because they thought it had to deal with treasures, they weren't telling anybody about this, And so I slowly, because I was a treasure hunter, I was able to unlock the secrets of this stuff, where these things were, but I still haven't figured out exactly what they are. But that to me is the biggest treasure to me. That's not gold bars like I'm looking for. It's not, but that was a huge treasure to me. Other than that, my biggest treasure is my wife.
That's awesome. And that's what this whole show is about too. And that's with me. I always say I'm looking for gold nuggets. And I refer to this, show as the hero's journey. And you're going through and you're looking into all these different subjects and gathering the puzzle pieces and trying to put together a whole picture of everything. And more often than not, we find out that the story that we have or we've been told is either A, nefariously twisted so the truth has been hidden, or there's just a select few that have the truth, and it's just been disinformation from the beginning, and then you just have everybody repeating what they've been taught and don't even know that they're helping in the spreading of disinformation. Far as evolution, diffusionism, as we was having that conversation before we started recording, just all these different things is just fascinating to me to go and find all these different things and seek these out. But you had mentioned the Brewer Cave. And that's definitely something that I want to dive into with you, because you are definitely an expert when it comes to that. And so, like, just for the people that's unfamiliar with this, just give us the kindergarten slow walk story of what this is, and for those that just has no idea, what this cave even is.
So the Reader's Digest version of this is there was a man in the 50s. He was building the county fair was coming up, and he was kind of an artist, and he wanted to build an Indian bust with the feathers and all that out of arrowheads. He wanted to make this, thing of this Indian chief out of arrowheads, and he didn't have enough arrowheads to finish this project, and the fair's coming up. So he's asking around, where can he find more arrowheads? And somebody tells him, where he can go find some arrowheads, and he goes there and he digs down and he breaks into a cave. And he digs down in there and he's finding arrowheads, and he's digging deeper and deeper, and he finds these stairs. And this took 10 years for all this to happen. I mean, he started finding interesting things that didn't fit with the Native American Indians. He finds these stairs that goes down into a tomb. He's excavating this tomb and finding ancient records. He's finding these stone boxes. They're wrapped in cedar bark and smeared with pine pitch and covered with mud, so they look like dirt clods. Or one of them was a whole wall of these boxes that was smeared with. Well, as he's digging around, man, he finds these two giant sarcophaguses, and the lid is so heavy he can't get them off. So he gets this handyman jack in there and pry bar, and he pry bars it up, gets the handyman jack on there and lifts it up, man, and he finds two of these giant skeletons that are a man and a woman. The man is red haired, and he's I think it was like 8'9", and the woman is blonde hair and 7'6", and they both got gold breastplates and crowns and jewelry and a big sword and a shield and all kinds of things like that. And that's the basic story of Brewer's Cave. And then a lot of different things happened, and through the course of the years, people trying to get the information out of him. He didn't want to share it with others. He's afraid they was going to take it from him, and his boy ended up dead, and he figured it was somebody killed him, his boy, and so he blew the whole thing shut, denied the whole thing ever existed, and that was the end of that.
What is happening? What is up? Hold out your glass, because we're about to fill it up with some Kevlar Joe's coffee, of course. I want to encourage you guys to head on over to KevlarJoe.com for your caffeine fix. If you enjoy the show, help us keep the lights on by supporting the sponsor of this show. Head on over to KevlarJoe.com right now. And now that you got your brew ready, sit back, relax, and enjoy the journey, guys. Do you have a podcast or small business? Do you want to expose that business or podcast to thousands of people each week for an entire year for less than one car payment?
Now you have my attention.
I'm looking for sponsors of this show. I know you have seen and heard the Kevlar Joe ads on the podcast and YouTube channel. I can do the same for your podcast or business each and every week. I promise you, you're not going to find a better advertisement value for your buck. My contact info can be found on my website, PrometheusLensPodcast.com, or reach out to me on social media. Let's talk, and let me show you how you can grow your brand effectively and cheaply. And see, when I was following up on this, it was saying that this was a burial chamber, and this is in Utah, correct?
Yes, central Utah.
And it started off talking about this guy named George Keller, and that he basically had a childhood Indian friend called Lone Eagle, and that his father, had shown him this cave when he was a little boy, and that him and John Brewer, George Keller and this Lone Eagle would play out in the woods and in the hills, and that he basically showed Keller where this place was, and he was the only one, that really knew where this place was. And so when this John Brewer guy was needing these arrowheads, the town folk basically pointed him to Keller and said, this guy can help you out, and trades him a bottle of wine to show him where this place was.
Yep.
And it sounds like something, like Banded Clovis, Tyler Childers' song. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but he's talking about searching for arrowheads. He might have actually wrote this song about this story, but he's talking about this guy is looking for arrowheads, and traded a bottle of wine for this location. And this guy took him out, and they dig, and he finds the arrowheads, and they were banded with Clovis, and just a really nice hoard and find worth a lot of money. So then he turns around and kills his buddy Jesse. That showed him how to get there. Yeah. That was a nice little rabbit trail.
So Keller, George Keller, you're talking at the beginning of the century, the early 1900s. George Keller, he's a black kid, and he was adopted into the Keller family, which was a white Mormon family, and he didn't quite fit in. He was probably the only black person around for I don't know, probably in the whole town. I don't really know, but he didn't get along that well when he was a kid with the other kids around him, and so he ended up befriending some of the Indian kids and playing with them, and that's how he got to know about where this cave was. They went there all the time with some of his Indian friends and played. And then, like you said, years and years later, George Keller is an old man now. And somebody told Brewer, go ask Keller. He probably knows. He used to run around with the Indians when he was a kid, and Keller shows him, tells him where it's at, but Brewer can't find it. And so he went and talked to the person that told him to go talk to Keller, and he says, man, that Keller must be pulling my leg, because he told me there's the cave and where the Indians used to hang out, and there's stuff's there, and I'm not finding nothing. He's probably lying to me. And the guy says, well, hey, give him a bottle of wine. He'll probably tell you. And so that's what Brewer did, and George Keller did. George Keller took him to the area, so and pointed, says right there, and Brewer says, hey, no wonder I couldn't find it. I was looking in the wrong place. What I thought he meant is not really what he meant, so.
And it keeps mentioning this temple that, like one of the quotes that I seen was that Brewer said, well, no wonder I couldn't find it. It wasn't at the base of the temple. It was on the backside or on the other side. And then when I was watching some of these videos that you had put out, this woman, she kept referring to the temple. So is this some kind of like ancient temple or ancient site
so
close by?
That's a Mormon temple, and I think it was built in the 1800s sometime. And it's one of where the Mormons have their sacred ceremonies or whatever. It's a huge building, but it's a huge landmark there in this area. And so that's why he's mentioning this temple is because that, it's been there forever, and it's a huge building, a huge landmark. So he's using that as a landmark of where this is at.
Okay. And, that's another thing too, is like, and the people that listen to my show knows I have a little bit of, conspiracy theorist in me, but it's like, what is the association with churches and, organized religion setting up temples and building these sacred sites and stuff close to these ancient burial mounds and sacred sites to Indians and other indigenous peoples? You ever notice that?
So I haven't really delved into that. But the kind of the story, the Mormon story about this is that they went to build this temple someplace else. And one of the big leaders in the Mormon church says, hey, no, man, I've had a vision, or I've had revelation, or I've had something, inspiration, saying that one of the ancient guys already dedicated this area right here for a temple, and so we got to build it right here where it was been dedicated. Now, who knows? But that's why they build it there. And Brewer's Cave. If you believe in Brewer's Cave and these ancient giants and their ancient records being in this area, and if you believe there's one, which I do, then you have to believe that they have got to be all over in that valley. There has to be more than one, I would think. And John Brewer says that. He found a map rock, and it took him years and years and years and years to crack the code, and he finally cracked the code. And this map rock showed that there was 33 locations of these tombs with these ancient repositories, and I don't know if this is a king and a queen in here, these giants. I don't know who they are, but he says 33 locations scattered throughout the western United States, and 7 of them are in that valley. And he found one other repository. It wasn't a cave, but it was a buried repository. But there was supposed to be a huge one, all bigger than all the other 33. Across the other side of where he found the one. But he'd spent his whole life looking for that, and he never, ever did find it. And I talked to his grandson who lived with him, and his grandpa would take him out. Brewer would take him out with him, and he says, my grandpa would just sit on the hillside with his binoculars all day long, just scanning the hillside, looking for things, watching for the shadows to change, hitting it at different times, the angles of the sun. He's just always scanning that same area, scanning the whole mountain. And he was going to take me out there and show me where they was always looking for this, where his grandpa was. And then a few weeks before we was going to go out, he got electrocuted and passed away. So that never happened. But
that's just wild. And you also mentioned too that, and I missed this part, or maybe I just didn't make it that far in my studies, but you said they were red-haired. That's another common theme.
Yep. The man was red-haired, but the woman was blonde-haired. And he didn't say if they had double rows of teeth or 6 fingers or things like that. When he unlidded the lid of the stone coffin, the sarcophagus, he just slid it backwards just far enough. And then they had a piece of cloth over him, like a reed, or not a reed, but some kind of a cloth made out of. And he pulled it down just far enough that he could see, that they had breastplates on, they had crowns on, they had, he never, this was, back then you didn't know about giants. I didn't even know about giants till I found this. When I accidentally stumbled into these records that had this stuff in it, I didn't know there was such thing as giants. I thought, well, the only thing I knew of was the story of David and Goliath. I thought this is obviously bogus. Giants and stone sarcophaguses and ancient records, But I was a treasure hunter, and it was intriguing enough for me. I had enough information in these files I got that I could backtrack and call some of these people that was involved. And the ones that were still alive, I interviewed them and I tracked things down, and I still didn't know about this giant thing. But I happened to find where this John Brewer brought out one of these stone boxes and that was wrapped in cedar bark, and he gave it to a professor to have tested. Well, this professor, he passed away, and so he never was able to do that. Before he passed away, though, he gave it to somebody else. I tracked down that person. I didn't know this stone box even existed with these records in it.
Was that the BYU guy, Chessman? Chessman, yeah. Yes.
So I didn't even know this box existed, and I tracked down, just trying to find out more about this story, seeing if there's any truth to it. And he says, "Oh, you probably want to see this," and he brings it out and shows me. And I thought, "Wow, that's pretty cool, but this could be a fraud." So that's when I got with some people. We formed the Ancient Historical Research Foundation, and we did some carbon dating on that box. When they carbon dated that box, they knew what it was.
Hey guys, got a call to action for you. If you're enjoying the show, please take the time to share this episode with family and friends on social media. Hey, speaking of social media, find us on our various platforms. The banner down below can show you where to find those. If you want to support the show, but don't want the monthly subscription to the members-only community or the all-access pass, you can also do a one-time donation to help support the show. Find us on PayPal or Venmo. Username ELROD32, ELROD32. All donations will get a shout out and a thank you on a recording. Thank you guys for all the love and support. Back to the episode.
They thought it was going to come back modern, but it came out at 2500 BC. And when it came out that old, it floored them, it flabbergasted them. So they knew they screwed up. So they ran the test 10 times, and 10 times that carbon dating came out to 2500 BC. Well, they got checking in. They was doing some carbon dating on some other stuff at the same time. And that stuff came back to way older than they thought it would be too. So they got checking, and they did screw up. They got a different solution, and they hadn't recalibrated their machine to it. When they did the recalibrations and all that, it threw our date on that bark on that box from 2500 BC. It threw it back to between 50 and 350 BC, which was still really, 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 really old. And to me, though, the significant thing was they ran the test 10 times, you know? And so when I got that date back, I thought, wow, there might be something to this. And so that's when I really started digging deep, looking hard.
Well, I mean, that's just that. I commend you for it. I mean, because that's something that, like the roots of a tree, there's so many people that I can just, imagine was involved in it some way, form. I'm sure you had to track down just family members, friendships, how many times these stories changed hands. And there was also, I seen that he kept a journal.
Yes.
And that there's a lot of debate, which there always is, if this was genuine or not. And then, of course, I even heard that some people were under the impression that he may have wrote down lies intentionally to protect this site and throw people off. So, I mean, you definitely had a lot of rabbit trails you had to go down.
Yep. Yeah. So that journal, he emphatically said that this was not his journal. Well, he did not want this out in the public. Two things happened. You had the camp that thought he was a fraud, and let me back up. So the Mormon church found out about this, and they were in there and trying to see what was going on with this, because they were really interested in that, because it aligned, whether it does or not. They thought it aligned with their beliefs. Ancient
Joseph
records,
Smith found tablets.
giants. Yeah, so they thought it aligned with their beliefs. Whether it does or not, don't know. That's just why the Mormon church was there. So they were in there, and they was talking with Brewer, and Brewer wanted to share this with somebody. He wanted to, but at the same time, he didn't want to just give it to anybody or have it looted, pilfered. He thought it was something special, something great. And I can kind of relate with that, not 100%, because he found something way bigger than I've ever found. But I remember when I found the mystery glyphs up above, in Utah. It's in Provo.
You want to tell somebody? Yeah, you're excited.
So yeah, I found this, but all of a sudden I had all kinds of people wanting me to take it to them. Well, that was something cool that I found, and I wasn't going to share it with anybody else, and I didn't. So people would say, hey, it's way over there. It's way over there. And I wouldn't tell them the truth, because I was researching it. I didn't want anybody else going up there and figuring out what it was before me. If it had to do with treasure, I wasn't going to tell anybody where that was at. Well, that's kind of John Brewer. I can feel the same way. He did not want somebody taking this from him. Well, when BYU was in there, or when the church was in there, at the same time, BYU had some of these artifacts given to them, and their archaeologist came out and said, this is a fraud, And And then it got to a newspaper, and the newspaper reported it up. John Brewer's a fraud. This is a fake. Well, the church didn't know that BYU was in there. BYU is owned by the church, by the Mormon church. The college BYU. So BYU didn't know the church was in there. The church didn't know BYU was in there. And so when that article came out in the newspaper that it's a fraud, that Brewer thought he was betrayed by the church and he was going to take him in. So he shut the whole conversation down. He shut the whole thing down. Said, "That's it, man. I'm done with you guys. You guys betrayed me. I'm trying to show you something cool I found here. You guys betrayed me, But when that newspaper article came out, the townspeople, they crucified him. They crucified his kids. They came, your dad's a liar, in school, man. They tormented the kids. It caused nothing but problems for the family. Nothing but problems. And so after a while, to get away from it, he started saying, yeah, nothing, it didn't happen. It was all a lie. Well, when I got a hold of this journal, he denied that it was his journal. And you can see why. He doesn't want this out in the public. He doesn't want, he gave a copy of this to that professor. He wanted him to know that he was telling the truth, but it wasn't. My opinion, I could be wrong. My opinion, it wasn't the full journal. He just copied excerpts out of it and changed a few things because he didn't want to have full details, full everything. He just wanted him to know enough that he was telling the truth. Well, he denied that this is his journal. When it got out to the public, he denied it because now people are coming around again. People are bothering him again, and he doesn't want nothing to do with it. His boy's already passed away, and he figures it's because of somebody murdered him over this. And so he doesn't want nothing to do with it. He denies it. Well, I backtracked everybody that was still alive that was involved that he talked about in this journal, and it aligned. Whoever wrote that journal had to knew about his conversations with these people. I spent hundreds of hours tracking down people, recording people, getting their testimonies, getting their interviews, going through the people that passed away, getting their undocumented journals, their writings, what they had on this stuff. I spent hundreds and hundreds of hours and a lot of years tracking this stuff down,
Yeah, and you do all your stuff in person too. It ain't like we're doing right now. You just video chat with somebody. You had boots on the ground. And
well, back then you had to. There was no internet. There were no computers. This was back in the late 80s, early 90s. I had to. When I recorded somebody, it was with an old cassette tape, and it was fuzzy, to re-listen to them. But I have, them recordings I got of them people that are now passed away, those are a treasure to me, because there's no way I can tell their stories like them because they lived it. There's no way I could get the feeling into their stories because they lived it. There's no way I could tell the whole story. I'd forget things. I'd mess it up. They lived it. Them recordings I have of all them people, and I recorded a lot of people on a lot of different subjects. Those things are priceless to me.
Yes, sir. I agree. Yes. But looking in through here, it talks about all the different things that were found here. And like you had said, he gives some of these things out to BYU and to this professor. I don't have it in front of me, but it looked like cheese, but you corrected me earlier. Chessman, yes. But, they said, well, some of these are fake, and all this stuff. And then I even heard theories that, he, had done that as basically like a integrity test because he had actually given real artifacts to some people. Oh yeah, we're going to test it and do this and do that. And then they disappear. They just steal the item. And to me, that makes sense. And I like how you put it in the perspective of the treasure hunter, because if I found some kind of great, find, of course I would want to share it with people. But then of course you're like, people's going to steal my work, and they're going to rip this thing out from underneath me. It'd be really hard, but everything in you would be like, no, keep this to yourself.
Yeah, so he gave some out to some friends that took him to the universities, BYU, University of Utah, and they all declared him a fraud. They never really even done any good tests on him. They just says, oh man, we can't, this don't have really a good language on it, so it's a fraud, I mean, anyway, so
fair shake.
He never got him back. He asked for him back, and they never gave him back, and then people stole some from him. And he felt like this was a sacred site. This was a sacred thing. These records, this tomb, he felt that this was sacred. And he felt that because he lost them, God was punishing him. And anything that went bad in his life, he blamed on he lost these ancient records and that God was punishing for him. That's how involved in this he was. And so he did make some replicas. He did and he started giving them out to show people so they could kind of see what the language was, and that's what a lot of it that they tested that came out, oh, this is fake. And I even tested one myself. I had a guy, and this guy stole it from him. He stole it from him, and I found out about it, and it was supposed to be a gold plate. And I found out he had this gold plate that he'd stolen from Brewer. Brewer's now dead and it's gotten out, And so I hit him up that if I could do some tests on this thing. And so he brings it to me, and I'm looking at it close, and this thing doesn't look gold at all. This thing looks more like copper or brass, and I can see, some tin snip shear marks on the sides, and I'm thinking, man, this don't look real to me. But I took it and I had a spectral analysis done with it, and an XRF done on it. And it came back the exact same composition as a rifle brass. And so it looks to me exactly what it is that they took a rifle brass, cut it up, flattened it out, made it, flat, and then put these markings on it. It came out that it was modern. It was a fraud, But I think, and that helps put cloud around the whole Brewer Cave thing. Is the whole thing a fraud? Is part of it a fraud? Is part of it real? Until it's broken in and you find that there's these two ancient giant mummies and stone sarcophaguses. He can't fraud ancient giant mummies, But he did that because people were stealing this stuff from him, and even his frauds they stole from him, So, yeah.
And one thing I was going to talk about, because you had mentioned how he thought it was a sacred site, and how by losing these things he was cursed, and that was part of the bad luck. I mean, that was part of the original story, because George Keller, what was it? George Keller, when he was shown this site, he said that his friend Lone Eagle told him that this was the cave of the great spirits. And that it was a sacred burial place, and it was protected by a great Indian chief.
Yeah,
I got that part right.
Yep, and he was 100. And we didn't know this until we got that journal of his. He put that in there, and that's when he put, I've lost these plates. I thought of selling this stuff for a lot of money, and man. And now I can see that I'm wrong, and God's punishing me for having these thoughts of selling these sacred things, for losing these sacred artifacts. And then things happen to him in his home life. His wife left him for a while. He got thrown out of the house. Things started hitting him, and he blamed it on all of his problems on, for losing these ancient artifacts, for having these thoughts of selling somebody and making a lot of money. He blamed himself for all this. Whether it was attributed to that or not doesn't matter. It's what he thought in his mind that it was.
Which he even recorded a supernatural encounter in this cave, right?
Yep.
Was that in the journal, or was that just like, word of mouth?
That's a story that he told somebody else. That's not in the journal. Yeah.
Go into that.
So he's in there. I mean, he's got a terrible home life. His wife, he'd go to work, and his wife would take his arrowhead collections, his other stuff, man, and sell them. And it made him mad, and he just wasn't getting along with her. So he spent a lot of his time after work. He wouldn't go home. He'd go and spend in this cave and excavate and do stuff, so do a lot of thinking. And we're talking 10 years or more he did this. He spent a lot of time during the summer times. He couldn't really get in there very good in the winter time. But this during the summertime. Well, one of the times he was in there, he felt like there was somebody in there, and they turned around and there was a personage, and he thought somebody followed him in. And so he turned him around and he told him to get out of his cave, and this personage, did something to him, man. It shocked him or threw him to the ground or something. He didn't touch him. He just did something. And he says, man, this is a sacred site. He says, we've let you here to be a guardian of this, but you'd better not lose anything. You better not sell this thing. You better not tell anybody where this thing is. You better not. Is that true? That's what he told somebody. I don't know. But I used to didn't believe in ghosts. I thought they was phony until one day I talked to a person for a half hour. He looked like a normal person to me. I find out 4 months later that this guy I'd talked to had been dead for 10 years. And that blew my mind. And that changed my thinking right then and there. I thought, wow, everything I thought was real in reality might not be. I would have never known. I talked to this guy who'd been dead. If somebody else hadn't mentioned something, I would have never, ever known. I'm thinking, wow, how often does that happen? You don't know. And that just blew my mind. Because I was a non-believer in that stuff. I thought people were on drugs crazy or something. Man, I wasn't on drugs when this guy, and I wouldn't have known. I didn't even know for 4 months later. 4 months later, I'm trying to think, man, what actually happened? I'm trying to remember what happened, 4 months later, I'm trying to remember what happened.
Man, yeah, that's just crazy. Was that somebody that you just bumped into random chance, or was this somebody like you interviewed?
No, it was somebody I bumped in random chance. I went to the Dutch Hunters Rendezvous in Apache Junction, Arizona. All the Lost Dutchman treasure hunters get together and have a little rendezvous, and they invited me out to that. Well, while I was there, they gave me a free ticket to go to the Lost Dutchman Museum. So I go to the Lost Dutchman Museum. I'm wandering around. Got done. I'm getting ready to leave, and this older gentleman, he stops me and he asks me where I'm from, and I'm from Utah. But at the time I was working in Wyoming. I says, well, I live in Utah, but I'm spending my weekdays in Wyoming and my weekends in Utah, because that's where I live. And he told me he was from Wyoming. And anyways, we had a big, long conversation. Wasn't really any great conversations. It was a cool story, but it wasn't anything real spectacular or anything. And he mentions a few things, and it wasn't till 4 months later. Well, the story is he told me about how he wanted to get out to these coke ovens that the pioneers built, and out in the Superstition areas there, Superstition Mountains, and that there was a heart above the coke ovens there on the mountains. And he wanted to get out there. He finally found a guy that would take him out there. And so they go out there in his Jeep, and they're coming back. He gets a flat tire. They change the tire. Well, he ends up getting another flat tire. So he's riding on the rim. He gets another flat tire. So now he's driving on two rims, and they get stuck. And this is, in the middle of the mountains there. It's summer. It's hot. And there's nobody. They're out in the middle of nowhere. So at night they hike out. They early in the morning, they hear some noise on a bluff. They hike up there. There's a dirt road and a motorhome up there, an older couple. They feed them breakfast, take them down. They go get new tires. Their friend brings them out. They put them on and drives out. That was the end of the story, it took a half hour for him to tell me this, because he was living it in details. But it wasn't, I thought, man, if this is a great story, this is a treasure hunter guy. Has to be, If this is a great story, I want to record it and put it on my YouTube channel. Well, it wasn't a great story. I wished I'd have recorded that. I never recorded this. I wished I would have recorded this, because when he's done talking to me, this guy doesn't look dead to me. People are walking around us. Nobody's bumping into him. I'm thinking, man, could everybody see him? Just me see him? Did people not walk close to us because they see me talking to myself and stayed away, or did everybody?
Like the Sixth Sense movie. Yeah, you're just sitting there talking away to nobody.
Yeah. So 4 months later, I go to this guy who I'd heard that there was some Egyptian artifacts found. A guy contacted me. They found a necklace that looked like it was an Egyptian necklace, and they found it out near the Gila River. They was out cross country and on their motorbike, and they was near the river, and they was spinning donuts, and one of them flipped this necklace up out of it. You know, there's no towns or anything nearby anywhere there. And so I wanted to talk to this guy and see if he knew if there was any Egyptian artifacts found, because I'm tracking down the Egyptians in the Grand Canyon, because there's been Egyptian artifacts found all over the place. There's been Egyptian artifacts found, you know. And so I want to know from this guy if he'd heard any of the Egyptian things found. He says, well, there's this one guy, he found a cave, and it's either got Egyptian artifact or Oriental artifacts in it. I know the area. I don't know exactly where the caves is, but I know the area. Let's go. So we go out there, and as we're driving out there, he says, oh, stop right there. He says, over there against the mountain, that's the coke ovens that the pioneers built. And then it clicked, man. 4 months earlier, this guy told me the story that this guy that I'm with takes him out to show him the coke ovens. And I says, hey, man, I met a friend of yours. You know, he told me you guys came out here to the coke ovens, and you got out and you got stuck and got flat tires. And he's telling me the whole story, and it's lining up with this guy that had already told me. And, you know, I'd say, yeah, he told me this. And he goes, yeah, that happened, this happened. He says, yeah, he told me that. Well, I says, yeah, I met him about 4 months ago at the museum. And he's looking at me funny, and he says, you couldn't have. I said, what do you mean I couldn't have? He says, you must have been talking to somebody that's pretending he's him, because he's been dead for 10 years. And I thought, ain't no way.
Wow.
Ain't no way this guy was dead, you know? So I'm thinking he's wrong. I'm thinking he thinks he's dead, but he's really not dead. So I ended up over at the God, I can't think of the name of it. It's the Goldfield Ghost Town. And one of the owners of it, Bob Schust. I'm talking with Bob Schust. I said, Bob, do you know, because I didn't know this guy's name until then, you know, this Salvador, he's telling me, yeah, his name's Jim Hatt. He's been dead for 10 years. So I thought, wow, that, you know, he's got to be wrong. He just thinks he's dead because he ain't seen him for a while, but he ain't dead because I talked to him. Yeah. So I go to Bob Schust. Bob, you know Jim Hatt? He says, oh, yeah, Terry, you'd have liked him. And this is one of the things this guy tells me. He says he's one of these engineers guys, and he worked out on all them power plants in Wyoming like you are. Well, this guy tells me that. I told him I'm working at a power plant in Wyoming, and he tells me, oh, yeah, I worked on that one you're at and all these other ones, you know. And so I says, yeah, I met him, Bob, about 4 months ago. And Bob looks at me funny. He says, you couldn't have. He's been dead for 8 to 10 years. So I thought, ain't no way. So I go back to the museum. I want to find this guy, you know. So I go back to the museum, and I says, man, is Jim Hatt here? And the guy there, he says, there's nobody by the name of Jim Hatt here. I says, yeah, I met him here about 4 months ago. He's had a badge on. He was kind of a tour guide thing. He says, well,
the guy worked there.
Yeah, he worked there. So, and he stopped me. I was leaving. He says, hey, where are you from, young man? He stopped me. I was just going. Anyways, so this guy says, well, I've been here for 4 years, and I don't know anybody by that name, but sometimes we have volunteers, and I don't know all their names. Let me go back and ask. So he goes back, and he says, oh, yeah, Jim Hatt, he helped start this museum. He used to, you know, but he's been dead for 8 to 10 years. And I thought, wow, that just changed my life, because I didn't believe in ghosts. I thought people that seen ghosts were crazy, and I don't know what to think. He did not look like a ghost to me. He did not look dead, man. It was like me and you talking, except for in person, face to face. You know, I'm baffled. I'm blown away. Well, I don't know how I got off on that tangent, but
I'm glad you did, because we was talking about, you know, how he had a supernatural experience in the cave.
Yeah. So, you know, when I heard that story, I hadn't had my ghost experience yet, so I thought, he's on drugs or something, you know? I didn't believe in that stuff. Now I don't know what to believe, you know?
Oh, yeah.
I don't expect nobody to believe me on my story about my ghost. You know, I don't even believe it myself, you know, so.
I mean, yeah, that's just crazy. And the same thing too is, I mean, I'm a skeptic, you know what I mean? A healthy, you know, skeptic of all things. But I do know, I mean, there's things in this world that just cannot be explained. And just because I've not seen it or experienced it doesn't mean that it's not real. I've heard some crazy stories from some people that I trust with my life and have no doubt in my mind that they would ever lie to me, and they've told me some experiences they had. I have to take them at their word for it because their word's been good on everything else.
Yeah.
But, and like Ron Wyatt, you familiar with Ron Wyatt?
A little bit, not a lot, but a little bit.
The same story with the Ark of the Covenant.
And all that stuff, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he found some good, solid, stuff with the Red Sea crossing, the real Mount Sinai. And I'm not going to lie, when I heard that story of him finding the Ark, and then an angel appeared to him and said that the world wasn't ready for this, and that they were going to take it, and all this, and I was like, oh yeah, how convenient, of course, it gets taken. The world's just not ready for it yet, and this is just some kind of wild story. But then you hear other stories and have experiences. You just have to keep an open mind, and just because you've not experienced it or seen things like that doesn't mean that stuff like that doesn't happen.
Yep. So that's kind of what I've had to do is I hear all kinds of stories, and in my mind I'm going, yeah, right. But then I got to think, who am I to judge these people? Who am I to determine if their story is true or not? So just like you said, I listen to it, I file it up here, I keep an open mind, and who knows, someday it might click and mesh, and who knows.
Mm. One thing that stood out to me, and I wanted to pick your brain on, because me, I try to filter different things through, like a biblical worldview. So like when you hear about the red-haired six-fingered giants, I go back to the Nephilim tribes, in the book of Deuteronomy and Numbers and things like that, and try to see how things stack up against the biblical narrative and how they fit. And a lot of times, I find correlations just everywhere. But I might be mispronouncing this, but the Mahanti panel?
The Mahanti panel?
Yeah. I'd seen that in one of the videos that you had shared, and they translated it, and here's how they translated it. It says, I, the Mahanti, the second king of the Lamantites, in 5 valleys and the mountains, make this record. In the 1200th year since we came out of Jerusalem, and have 3 sons gone to the south country to live by hunting antelope and deer. And, this was translated by Professor James Harris.
James Harris.
And says that he believes it to be a mixture of Egyptian and Utah Fremont. Now, Utah Fremont. Now, is that like a indigenous people, like an Indian type language, or what is that exactly?
That was an ancient Indian culture, the Fremont culture, that lived in this area. Yeah, and so James Harris was a BYU scholar, which is and he was an Egyptologist. BYU is owned by the Mormon Church, and so what you're talking about there, he's referring it to Book of Mormon history. The stuff like that. He's referring it to. So that's
where they called it the Jaredites.
The Jaredites. That's what Brewer thought. That's what the Mormons thought, that these were the Jaredites in the Book of Mormon. Their it's like their Bible. They use the Bible and they use the Book of Mormon both. They say they complement each other. The Bible is what happened over there. The Book of Mormon's what happened over here. Who knows? So in the Book of Mormon, it talks about the Jaredites, who were a large statured people. So, anyways, back to James Harris. So James Harris was an Egyptologist, and these mystery glyphs that I tracked down that got me started on this the whole time. There was a set of these in Manti, and John Brewer thought that these mystery glyphs was tied in with these tombs somehow. That's what John Brewer believed. He believed, this map he found, it showed 33 locations throughout the western United States, and he felt that somehow these mystery glyphs was tied to them.
And that's a Masonic number. I've been doing a lot of research on Freemasons.
Yeah.
And 33, that is a big Freemasonic cult number with a lot of symbolism and stuff behind it. And I find that fascinating, especially since the LDS Church, is involved in this site.
Yeah.
Because Joseph Smith, was a 33rd degree Freemason.
Yep.
And a lot of the rituals and symbolism and things like that come directly from the Freemasons. Like, for instance, the white aprons, the lambskin aprons that they're buried in, the Mormons, that is mimicking the white lambskin apron from the Freemasons, because that is it symbolizes Adam's coverings that God gave him in the garden. So I mean, there's other little things in there too, but yeah, I thought that piqued my interest when you mentioned that number 33. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
That's all right. So James Harris, he's one of the people that I interviewed because he went on record stating that these mystery glyphs were a fraud and were done by a guy named Jose Davila, and he did it to try and get favor with the Mormon Church and to trick people thinking that this had to deal with the Nephites and the Lamanites in the Book of Mormon, and Jose Davila believed that it did have that, but Jose Davila did not carve these. These things, I got newspaper record, writings from the 40s and 50s saying that these things looked old when they found them in the 40s and 50s, But James Harris thought that these ones in Manti and Fillmore, he thought that Jose Davila did these carvings. But he did some research and he found that there was a National Geographic photographer who photographed the ones in 1925 in Fillmore. And when he seen that, he knew that Jose Davila couldn't have done that. So then he went to researching and figuring out what these were. And he came up with that they were Old Negev, and there was an old form of Hebrew that these
Paleo Hebrew
mystery glyphs are. He says that's what they are. I don't know that I believe that, but that's finally what he came to the conclusion of.
And I believe it because L.A. Marzulli, I know you've talked to him too, talked to L.A. quite often. And I have an episode on my YouTube channel where we talked about America's Stonehenge. And I think it's New Hampshire. But they had found there was a collapsed chamber. And they went in there and they found all kinds of tablets with writing on it that they couldn't, decipher what it was. They couldn't make it out. And there was a Professor Harry Fell, I think's what his name was.
Barry Fell. Yeah,
Barry Fell. He was from Harvard University.
Yep.
And they discovered that this was an ancient Paleo Hebrew language, and they ended up labeling this stone the Baal stone because on it says, I'm paraphrasing, so don't quote me word for word, but basically it said, from the Canaanites, this is dedicated to Baal of the Canaanites.
So
Baal, so
so
you see that stuff everywhere.
He's a smart guy. He knows a lot more about this stuff than me. He is a smart guy. So if you know LA, man, you're in good company.
Oh yeah, I love just having these conversations. These guys that's just like yourself that's taking these deep dives and got the 10,000 plus hours and pick your brain and try to learn as much as I can on these different things, because in some way, shape, form, or fashion, all these things they dovetail and tie in together somewhere.
So I'll tell you this, when I was tracking down the mystery glyphs, who wrote these, what they were, what they meant, why. When I started finding these other sites, I didn't personally find them. I only found the one site in Provo, Utah. but I tracked down that people that knew about them, and I started tracking down that there was some interesting things found near these sites. Like there was a site in Pocatello, Idaho, of these mystery glyphs. And in 1918, this young girl, this little girl, she found this rock that you could see had been carved into the size and shape of a chicken egg, and it had some scratchings on it. Well, she kept it all her life. Found in 1918. She kept it all her life. And when she was older, her great-granddaughter was there visiting her, and she was rummaging through her stuff and found this, and she gave it to the great-granddaughter. The great-granddaughter kept this rock that her great-grandmother gave her all her life. Well, in the 70s, when King Tut's tomb was making its round around the United States, the Smithsonian's magazine put out an article about King Tut's tomb. Well, she was in the dentist's office, and she was looking through it, and she got noticing, that there was markings on King Tut's sarcophagus was the same markings that was on this rock that her grandmother had found. And they thought it was just these markings. They thought it was just Indian scratchings. So she took it to the University of Berkeley, and they authenticated that it was a piece of alabaster that came from Egypt, and it had King Tut's high priest signature on one side of it and the cartouche of his name on the other side. Now, when they wanted to buy it from her or her to donate it, and when she told them no, she wasn't going to let them have it, then they shut up. They wouldn't tell her any more information. But it was curious to me. It was curious to me that this girl found this in 1918, and they never even broke into King Tut's tomb till 1922. They didn't even really know who King Tut was until then. How did that rock, with his cartouche and his signature, end up in Pocatello, Idaho, before they even really knew who he was? How'd that happen? And there's some other Egyptian artifacts has been found around the western United States, and I'm sure all over the United States. But that's just some that I know of.
Yeah, because they I think we were talking about this before we started recording. We're both diffusionists. These ancient people were sailing the world, way, way, way before Columbus. You had mentioned they find the cocaine in the tombs of the pharaohs. They find depictions of corn on hieroglyphs. Corn's not indigenous to Egypt. Where was they getting it? The blue lotus flower from India depicted in Egypt. Serpent imagery throughout the world. Pyramids throughout the world. And that guy, you had his name, Thor.
Thor Heyerdahl?
Yeah, built a little reed boat and took off from, where was it, Spain?
It's something like that, I don't remember, yeah.
Yeah, and just the natural current and wind patterns took him straight to South America, wouldn't it?
Yep. So you had the Phoenicians who were expert sea people.
Known to be giant clans.
You can't tell me that they didn't figure out a way to even if it was accidentally, their boats didn't even just accidentally, drift and float over to here. But them being excellent seafarers,
Yeah.
You talked about Barry Fell, from Harvard University. He started the Epigraphic Society, and he was a full 100% believer that there was intercontinental travel way before Columbus, and they was over here getting they established trade here with other continents, and they was here getting the resources that were here, the copper, the corn, the cocaine, they was doing all that stuff. So
yeah, I mean, it's just amazing when you look back into it. And of course, my gears turn. It's like, why? If you're finding the evidence and all signs, all logic point to this direction, why do you just suddenly, just so stiff-necked, just, no, I don't see it. No, it's like, why?
Yeah.
Is it, what are you trying to hide? Or are you just that stubborn to admit you're wrong, and you've got so much time, money, and research invested in this one idea, you would rip your nose off to spite yourself?
So I can see what's happening here, is way back when they established that this is what happened here, and it probably has to do a lot with manifest destiny, that the natives were savage, low life people, and we needed to come in and educate them and raise their life up. So it was great that we'd come in and take the lands and do whatever we did with them, that needed to do, because they was savages, If there's evidences that they did have written language, that there was things here before that they did, if there's evidences of that, then this manifest destiny, man, means they came over and illegally took over and conquered a country that they really shouldn't have, according to the rules and the laws that they had back then. Whether that's why they try to hide it, I have no idea. It makes no sense to me. But I do know this, that the archaeologists will not stick their necks out for giants, for out of place artifacts, because for them to put their name on it. For them to put their name on it, yeah, this is a credible thing. It's suicide for their career, because now they're labeled a fake, a fringe, a quack, and they just lost their their income, their livelihood, and kicked out and ostracized by the main group, And I had a guy tell me that he had an archaeologist tell him that if he found giants, if he found ancient records, he'd cover them up and pretend like he never ever seen them, because he didn't want to deal with them. He wouldn't put his name on it, and I've had other people tell me that. I had a guy tell me that they was doing a dig, and they was only supposed to go so deep. And this one student, he went deeper, and he found an out of place artifact. And he took it over for him to record it, and they chewed him out, man. You went deeper than you were supposed to, and they wouldn't record it because it didn't fit the narrative. I had another guy tell me he was going to be an anthropologist. Same thing happened to him. He found an artifact, and he went to get it reported in the books of what they found and where it was found, and they would not report it. They would not put it in the books because it didn't fit the narrative of it was out of place for there, and he says that the professor took that thing and put it on his desk, and he says, who knows what happened to it? We just lost history right there. How many times does that happen, that we lose history because it doesn't fit? It doesn't fit with what they're digging, so they won't record it. How many times has that happened? And because of that, we're not getting a true history.
Yep. And I'm a Christian, so that, and people listening knows. I'm just saying that, for you, Terry, because this is our first conversation. I'm a Christian, but if you look, along the lines of what we're talking about, Peru, South America, here come the conquistadors. Totally took advantage of the mythos of the plumed serpent, Quetzalcoatl, that he, was this shining god and bearded and pale skin, and that he was going to return one day. Well, here they come in their shining metal and their long beards, pale white skin, and they worshiped them as gods, and they totally just raped and pillaged the land and took everything. And then here comes the Catholic Church, manifest destiny, like you talked about. We're going to educate these poor savages, and we're going to Christianize them and get rid of all their demon gods and worships and false ideology, and then they rounded up everything, all their tablets, all their scrolls, their writings, everything.
Destroyed it all.
And that's like,
destroyed it all.
We lost all that information, all that knowledge.
Yep.
It's just sad.
It is sad.
But last question, because I don't want to tie you up. I could talk to you all night. But one thing that struck my attention, because we were talking about the beards, and that's honestly what that caught my attention with Brewer's sketchings in his journals. When he drew these mummies, I couldn't help but notice that, of course, it's black and white sketch, but he had a lot of Caucasian looking features. He had the long skinny nose. He had the really long beard, the long hair, and then the crown. He had a crown on his head, and it even looked like a cross with like a little sun arcing around the center of that cross. I don't know if I was just, preconditioning that I had seen that and was, seeing something that wasn't there. But did you see those correlations when you looked at that drawing? And then I guess another thing too was it looked like these were like busts, of the chest up, like sitting on a platform. But I'm glad you explained that he just drew it as like the lid slid back. Yeah, it looked like it had engravings at the bottom of it, and it looked like two dinosaurs facing each other. Yeah.
Alligators, dinosaurs, something. Yeah, so an interesting thing about that. Yeah, I never made the correlations, between anything of how they looked, I never went down that road I was just trying to figure out if these things were real. What happened was, this happened in the 50s. He's trying to take photographs of them, and none of his photographs turn out. So he just sketched them, sketched what the room looked like, the tomb looked like. So yeah, he drew it as far back as he pulled back the lid of the sarcophagus and the grass matting or whatever it was that was covering them, But those dinosaurs. So that stone box, it had 5 copper plates with writings on it. One of them writings showed the exact drawn. He drew it a little bit different than was on this plate, but you can follow it line for line. You can see it's the exact same thing. So I have to wonder in my mind, is this drawing that he drew, and this copper plate with this on it, is this telling about this guy's life, or is this guy's name? What are them symbols there? Is that his name? Is that, I don't know.
Well, it's just fascinating. But Terry, thank you so much for your time and coming and sharing some of your experiences and stories with us. I greatly appreciate it. And I hope this is the first of many. I'd like to have you back on and talk about some more interesting things. As long as you're willing to talk, I'll listen and throw my 2 cents back at you every once in a while.
Well, thanks for inviting me, and it's great to get to know you.
Yeah, you too, man.
That's the real treasure, is the stories you hear, the things you get to see, and the people you meet. That's the real treasure, And hey, now I've met you, man. I'm more blessed because of it.
Amen. I concur. Hey, before we go, Terry, just let everybody know where they can find you and your work, websites, YouTube channels, and where can they find your content?
So I have a YouTube channel. It's Terry Carter Treasure Hunter. Look for the pirate skull and crossbones guy. And then I have a Facebook page, just Terry L. Carter. I don't know.
All right. Yeah, be sure to check out his work, guys. He's got just thousands and thousands of hours of interviews and research, and a lot of entertaining shorts. And if you're listening to this show and watching my show, his content is right up your alley. You're going to enjoy it, so be sure and check him out. Until next time, guys, torches high.
Hey, this is Terry Carter, the Treasure Hunter. You're listening to Prometheus Lens Podcast.